Hello, and welcome to a special Michigan Progressive special conversation with Lisa DiRado, running for Michigan Democratic Party chair. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Taking the time to have the opportunity to talk in depth and detail about what's going on in the party and what your vision for that is, and how you see how we can move forward most effectively. So I just to give you a chance to introduce yourself to people who might not know you already. Can you give us a little bit of background on how you came into the party and what your experience has been?
So probably about 2006, my husband and I were at our Northville District Library, and we saw a sign saying Northville Democratic Club. So we walked in. It was about 10 people around a table, and we stayed for a little while. Then about 2 years later, my daughter came home from high school, and she said she started the Northville Democratic Club at the high school. And that's when I said to my husband, look, we are Democrats, we're passionate, we're proud, but we really need to get involved. So with that, I started to volunteer with the Northville Democratic Club. I think it was maybe 60, 70 people. I mean, it had grown substantially. And then, of course, with Obama, it grew a lot. My first job for the Northville Democratic Club was I delivered sandwiches on election day to poll challengers and poll watchers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I did a pretty good job of that, and so they asked me to run a fundraiser, so I did that. I had amazing people in that club. Scott Craig was the chair, still a friend of mine. Susan Nichols, who's been one of my closest friends. She was the one who was, her house was the phone bank house. So I went to her house and to phone bank, and my daughters did even before I did, and we're dear friends to this day. But there was a woman named Liz Johnson, a UAW, an older woman, and she would always, at our meetings, save a seat for me. She'd say, Lisa, I got you a seat. Come and sit with me. And I would. And I called her my political mom. She was lovely. But she's the one who really pushed me to actually get active. And I think, Liz Johnson was a political organizer.
Okay.
That was her job, is to make other people political organizer. I mean, the UAW and our unions, they are the original empowering the next group to organize. That is their model. And so, I've done every job from delivering sandwiches up to, State Central Committee and, the Rules Committee.
Yeah, we were on the Rules Committee together.
Yep. And just every job, and I've enjoyed it, and now I'm in a position where I do have time to spend a lot more time with the Democratic Club.
Cool. Do you consider yourself a progressive, and what does that mean to you, if so?
So I do consider myself a progressive, and I believe most of the people in our club, most of the people believe in progressive policies. Policies, if you give me a mic, I'm going to talk about our values.
Sure.
That's kind of my thing.
That's what we want to hear about.
In the couple of years ago, we took the Justice Caucus training, and I don't know if you've ever taken Camp Milley.
I have not.
It's good training. And they told us about a man named George Lakoff, Don't Think of an Elephant.
Yep.
Went out and bought the book. But a couple of, then last year, I met a woman named Michelle Pallas, and I said, do you know anything about this, And she said, no, but let's run a training. Sure. So we brought people in from Minnesota, and they did value training in November of 2017. We trained about 100 people.
I'm sorry, is it with value training or training on like Lakoff's idea about basically how to expand the Overton window and engage people through their values to consider a wider range of ideas.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do. I that's what I would be shorthand for. That's what I would call value training.
Okay.
So
certainly a component, sure.
Lakoff has always said that our progressive values are unconscious and unspoken. And so we on the left, we talk about policy, right? So we will talk about single payer or Medicare for all or ACA. Republicans they don't really have a lot of policy, right? So I do believe we need our policy, but I believe in addition we really should be talking about everybody deserves health care. Health care is a human right. That's what Bernie Sanders did so effectively. And so I would think all of the things that you would list on the list of progressive values, I got a questionnaire from the Progressive Caucus and the Cannabis Caucus and the Young Dems.
Young Dems, yep.
Every single one of them was yes, 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 yes. And I bet if I gave a quiz at a meeting, every single person would say, there'd be only a few that didn't say yes to every one of them. I think if that makes you a progressive, I'm a progressive.
So part of the thing that I've run into a lot with talking with people who say the kinds of things that you just said. Okay, and I'm not saying everybody that says that, but I'm saying a lot of the times when you dig a little bit deeper, it's like, yes, we believe in that, but not if it comes at the expense of, for example, the right of billionaires to make as much more money as they can possibly manage. In other words, a lot of the time those values are expressed in the way that you've expressed them, but then when you press people on them, it turns out that that even people who say those kinds of things very often are still very much willing to prioritize accumulation of wealth by the already wealthy and by already very powerful corporations over the human rights that they've just expressed. For example, that people have that healthcare is a human right, that education is a human right, that clean air, clean water, nutritious food, good housing are human rights, etc. And so my question is how do you think that the economy works in a way that we can satisfy those human rights as a society? Because that's where human rights come from. They come from, we decide that we're going to make sure that these people have these things. Because if we don't do that, you can say it's a right all day long, but you can't get it. Okay. So as a society, we have to make a decision. Where are we going to allocate our resources? So my question to you on that would be, okay, if we say all these things are human rights, are you also are you also willing to prioritize those over the rights of the wealthy to get wealthier, over the rights of corporations to gain more wealth and power? And would you even say that those things are rights? Is it the right of the wealthy to get wealthier? Is it the right of corporations to become more wealthy and powerful? Or are those not rights that society should extend to people and organizations in those positions?
So I think as Democrats, the problems we've had in the past is we, decided the party probably before, I don't know, I was involved, I'm not sure about you, there was a belief we need to be kind of a Republican light, we will get the middle, and that was a political calculation.
That was the triangulation of the Clintons in the 90s.
Right, and maybe it worked, I don't know. But it's not right. It is, and I think now it obviously does. It's failed for year after year. But I think part of our values is how we define cost. So Republicans, we will say, look, everybody deserves health care. And a Republican will say, it costs too much. And they mean dollars. What we as Democrats need to say is, we're not going to define it in dollars. We're going to define it in the cost of people suffering, the people that are dying because they don't have insurance. And an economist will say that the definition of a cost is money you can't spend elsewhere, right? You've probably studied economics.
It's a reasonable definition.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we can say, Republicans can say, we don't have enough money to give health care. But what we should say as Democrats, let's take money that we shouldn't be spending, maybe, let's say military hardware, and we will choose to, because the cost of sick people is too big, the cost of all this suffering is too big. But it's probably, I went to, on Monday night, I went and saw Screwed. The Femmes for Change did a documentary. It was terrific. The reality is, it probably doesn't even cost more overall.
Well, actually, the report that came out from the right just a few months ago said that it would cost 32 trillion over 10 years, and they made a big deal about that. What they didn't mention is that, of course, the current system costs 49 trillion over 10 years. So right, so it's actually much less costly.
Right.
But
amongst the Republicans, there would be a cost to certain individuals who are making $30,000 an hour as the CEO of a, there would be.
Well, there would also be costs to Democrats who rely on health insurance industry money to campaign. We just had this with Gretchen Whitmer, by the way, who I voted for. I was, certainly better than Bill Schuette, but not my first choice. And then she, put healthcare industry people in her transition team. I haven't looked carefully what some of her final picks were for the administration, but I've heard that there's some other people that we should be questioning, and that was a big divide among Democrats, about how to deal with it. Not between Whitmer and Abdul, and similar to between Hillary and Bernie, and I don't want to get into the personality piece of that, but if Democrats are, as you say, in favor of these things, and Whitmer fundamentally isn't, because affordable access means we will protect the insurance industry's profits. That's what that means, because it means that instead of just a single payer buying services from a provider, there's somebody in between who's going to who's not only going to do some paperwork, but are going to take a bunch of profit for doing that. And that's just extra money that gets spent on paying off paperwork, paper pushers, rather than actually providing health care. So to the extent that we have affordable access rather than universal single payer, it's actually costing us more money.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. When you were talking about affordable, so Lakoff would say that we should not talk about affordable and health care, because the whole putting a dollar amount on it when our value is sick people need care, that is not a progressive, and Lakoff uses progressive.
Right.
Progressive value. So we shouldn't talk about it. It's not whether it's affordable or not. It's whether we are choosing to take care of people.
Right, and right. So the choice is between, are we choosing to actually provide health care, or are we choosing to allow the already wealthy to have more wealth?
Yeah, while giving some people health care.
Right. Because we affordable access means that there's people that can't afford it.
Exactly.
So
I have
something
always said
something that's affordable isn't a right.
Yes, we have to get rid of that word. We shouldn't ever talk about the dollars, because once we've chosen to do it, it's not the dollars.
Right. And speaking of Lakoff, by the way, I think Lakoff would also advise you not to say deserve. Not to use the word deserve. You're talking about people deserve health care.
Yeah.
Because it's not about whether they deserve it or not. It's about it being a right.
Ah, you're right.
Being part of society means that people, that everybody in society ought to have the same level of access as everyone else to the fruits of human civilization. Nobody developed medical technology on their own.
Right.
Nobody developed any
Yeah.
one piece of medical technology on their own. They developed it on the backs of, on the shoulders of. I don't mean that they're necessarily, you know, oppressing somebody that came before them and developed this technology that they then advanced to a new technology. I'm saying that all of our medical technology, all of our technology in general, are tools that are developed from other tools that are developed from other tools, all the way back to the Acheulean hand axe. And those are the
Interesting.
fruits
Yeah.
of our civilization, our human civilization as a whole. The idea that people who live in that civilization and contribute to it should not have equal access to the fruits of that civilization is just a fundamental misunderstanding of the relationship, I would argue, between society and freedom. You can't be free if you don't have if you don't have a time to be free when you're not sick, and you know, and when you're sick, that you can get health care, so you can get, you know, so you can have time that you can use to exercise your freedom.
You're right. No, that's just very, yes, I agree. Absolutely.
So
So I would propose, which would be probably very, very potentially unlikely,
sure.
a simple platform, one page of powerful statements. I'm a chemist. I'm not an eloquent writer. We could get people who are, but things like water is life. Everybody deserves, and maybe not deserves,
Right.
but
Everybody has
you
a
know,
right to
has a
clean
right
water.
to clean water,
Sure.
and that would cover Line 9 and the people of Flint and the people who are and the company that's selling water, pulling it out of our Great Lakes, and you talk about fruits of the fruits of we deserve the fruits of our labors. Workers
We have a
deserve
right
the
to the fruits of our
we
labor.
have. I've got to switch that. I love that. I've got to think about that. We have a right. Workers have a right to the fruits of their labor. That's why we organize, because we don't have power unless we are organized. You know, and healthcare is a human right. I mean, we could. Can you imagine if we had a bold platform of our beliefs, and that people kind of knew what it meant to be a Democrat?
Well, I think that I agree. I mean, I think that would be great. You need a lot of detail after that. I mean, I think that you see groups and individual candidates doing that kind of thing. You know, so for example, I think Abdul did a great job of laying out those kinds of principles.
Simple.
Bernie did that.
See?
Not only simple, but then back that up with more details, because we do need more details than just, because there is a question of how are you going to do it.
Right.
But how are you going to do it? You know, that's.
But I think the details are with the caucuses and the candidates, because I can say this is where I want to be, right here, and then I will, as a citizen, maybe your candidate won, and you say this is how we're going to get there, and you say this is how we're going to get there, and then, so that, you know, but we're defining an overarching. What does it mean? What does it mean to be a Democrat? And the how. Is where the devil's in the details.
Right. Sure.
But that is, and up to the Progressive Caucus to make the case for their details and other.
But it's also not just the case, not just making the case for the details of a particular plan. It's also making the case for how the world actually works, because the way that the right attacks I say the right. What I really mean is the the right wing. I don't have a good term, but encompassing the right wing. I don't particularly like that term, but we'll use it for right now. Is that they say, well, if you do that, that's an imposition on our freedom. You don't, you know, that's and the world, you know, and you have to let the world work. You know, you have to have free markets, and if you don't do that, then you're imposing on people's freedom. They're talking about a basic idea about how the world works, and they've got it wrong. The way that they describe is not actually how the world works, because no free market has ever worked to the advantage of anybody but the very few who start out with an awful lot, or who manage to accumulate an awful lot, and then impose their will on everybody else. That's what happens in an actually free market.
Yeah, but they're not. The markets aren't even free.
Right. Well,
because it's totally crony capitalism.
Absolutely.
And we bail them out, and we don't even. Oh.
So they don't even follow their
They
own.
don't even follow their own rules.
Their own rules,
Yeah.
and sometimes
and
even,
they couldn't compete with the insurance companies cannot compete with Medicare.
Right. Right.
That's why they don't, because everyone would choose Medicare over whatever they could offer.
Right. So I want to move on a little bit.
Okay.
Should we have a detailed plan for dealing with climate change?
Should we? Who we? The
We-
Michigan Democratic Party.
No, we as in the people of our society.
Oh my God! Absolutely, I'm a scientist. Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
This is oh my God! Yes.
So right now we have a situation where progressives, spearheaded by the Sunrise Movement,
Yes.
supported by Ocasio-Cortez and other younger progressive leaders, but also Bernie Sanders and others, basically went to the Democratic caucus in the national legislature and said, we want to have a committee that will produce a plan, and it needs to produce a plan that's actually a viable plan in terms of being able to be implemented. So we need to be able to have subpoena power to bring people in and testify and find out the details, and we need to have the power to write legislation. Okay, maybe we have to talk about going through some of the committees, et cetera, but we have to have the power to write legislation so that we can write a plan for implementing what needs to be done. Okay, so the Green New Deal was basically a plan to create a plan.
Interesting. And I'd not heard it discussed that way.
And what Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the rest of the Democratic caucus in both caucuses in both the House and the Senate, the Senate less vocally because it wasn't being proposed there directly, basically said, no, we don't want to have a plan. We don't even want to have a plan to make a plan. We're going to have a committee that doesn't have the power to do those things. And we're not going to ensure that we're not going to try to make the committee. We're not going to even try to make the committee avoid conflicts of interest by putting people, Democrats or Republicans, on the committee who have a vested interest in the oil and gas industry.
Wait, say that again. We're not going to.
Yeah, because the original proposal was that people who have taken money from the oil and gas industry should not be on the committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That was the original proposal because that's a direct conflict of interest. We can't expect those people. They may be very nice people, but at the end of the day, a big part of how they plan to get reelected is to get oil and gas money, and if they're on a
okay, that makes sense.
And let me just unpack that a little bit more, because I really think I've said this on the podcast before, by the way, that we are in a situation right now that's actually, in some ways, in some structural ways, not moral. There's other moral ways and so on, but in some structural ways, very, very similar to where we were leading up to the Civil War. There were a small group of people, a tiny, tiny fraction of our population, who insisted that they could own people, and that created a toxic situation in our society. Okay, this idea that ownership could be applied to people. Right now, we have a very, very tiny, minuscule piece of our population who, on paper, have trillions of dollars. That is actually, and what those paper dollars are representing is a bunch of carbon that's still in the ground. And the only way that it's actually worth what it says in their stock valuations and so on, like for Exxon and Shell and all of those kinds of things, the only way that it actually that's actually worth that is if they get to extract it from the ground and sell it to people to burn.
Wow.
Okay, so their wealth depends on us having a deepening climate crisis. Okay, and so this is why it's really important for them, in their interest, to get people on any such committee who are on their side and will protect their profits,
yes.
just like affordable health care is protecting insurance company profits. So my question to you is, you're running for Democratic Party chair here in Michigan,
Yes.
for the state chair. What can state and local parties do, state parties, county parties, districts, clubs, etc., but especially at the state level? What can state level parties do to pressure not just national, but also state level Democrats to say, hey, we have to have a plan. And we need to then execute that plan because we have a climate crisis.
So let me ask, I had heard that there was a fair number of people, Congress people, who supported this Green New Deal, a pretty significant
Yes.
number. Are there any of them from Michigan?
I believe Rashida Tlaib.
Okay, good. Yeah, of course.
I would not be surprised if there were others. Debbie Dingell, who is my congresswoman here in the 12th district, I spoke to her about it, and she, says that she supports it. But it's not clear to me if she supports the actual proposal or what came out of the process.
Which is not.
Which is not the same thing. It's not. What came out of the process doesn't have the powers,
Right.
Because the leadership wouldn't allow them to have the powers to do that same thing. The reason the leadership wouldn't allow them to have those powers, whatever else they say about it, is because there's an awful lot of oil and gas money there. And if you think that's not the reason, then you're just not being realistic. I'm sorry. There's a lot of people that will argue about that, but
Well, that's a whole nother issue
Right.
of money in politics,
Sure.
which
right. We should talk about that.
we'll have to talk about that. So, what can we do as Democrats supporting, at least wanting a plan, would be, again, elect Democrats and then contact them. We have never been that good in my own organizing of keeping on top of people who we have elected to make sure they're voting the way we want them to vote. And I think that's part of it. Indivisible groups, the other groups, they seem to be doing a better job of even, of just keeping our representatives who we pay.
So my question is, if the party is actually run by the people,
Right.
shouldn't the party also be doing those things? Why does it have to be independent groups like Indivisible or Michigan for Revolution or or DSA or the Sunrise Movement? I mean, we want all of those as well.
We do want them.
But for example, as chair of the party, would you be in favor of using party resources not just to help get Democrats elected, but to hold them accountable to our values once they're in office?
And I haven't thought about that. But if we support our values, we absolutely have to. But how does that look? How does it work?
We organize phone banking. We organize phone banking to to get people elected.
Yeah.
Some groups organize phone banking, and there's. I mean, I want to say in the Washtenaw County Party, there are people that have organized. I'm sure that's true in some other local parties across the state. Have organized people to call, for example, during when there's a particular bill up, to call their representatives, and push them. But as a state party, I mean, I think that when we talk about more about the party and as we go through our discussion a little bit more, we'll come back to this. But are you open to the idea that the party is the party is the people that work to get these representatives elected? And we have a platform. For example, we have a platform that does that says environmental issues are important and climate change is important and healthcare is important and all of that. And so that shouldn't. I'm saying from my perspective, it seems to me that if the party is actually the people and not just a mechanism to help candidates get elected, then the party should take some ownership of holding those representatives' feet to the fire.
You know, and you're right, and there is a more even political way, reason to do that, because our representatives, even our Democrats, if they are only hearing from Republicans complaining, that they are listening to who they hear from. I think we as a party have not done a good enough job contacting our representatives, even in positives way, saying thank you for voting for XYZ, or well, I'm glad you voted for that, but maybe you could have done it this way, and showing up to coffee hours because in support of our Democrats. Now I'm from Northville. First time we've had a Democrat in many years. And one thing we're talking about as a club is making sure the people we have that are retired home during the day are attending the coffee hours, or if it's in the evening, the rest of us, because they need to hear from us too, and it is political cover. And especially if there is some belief potentially that the Republicans might take the indivisible model to start now. You know, attending, all the Democrats, we really need to show up.
Right. So
we should be doing that.
So one of the issues with that is that culturally in the party, a lot of the time when progressives talk about holding candidates' feet to the fire, criticizing candidates, where they don't agree with us, or where we think that they could do better, or basically for anything, we get a lot of pushback from folks. I know that people don't like the term establishment, but you give me another term and I'll think about using it at least. I'm open to a different term. For the moment, I'll use the word establishment. There are a lot of establishment Democrats who take any criticism of the party or of leaders in the party or of electeds from the party as an attack that must be fought off, as opposed to that's an opinion that exists within our diverse party, and we need to attend to that seriously, not try to silence it.
So as chair, I would not choose one establishment or progressive. We have to allow all our voices, and I really have a problem with the kind of dem on dem fighting. I just don't think it gets us. I don't know that it gets us anywhere. And there's just people who like to fight, and that's okay. So I would much rather see constructive. Attending a coffee hour, calling your congressman. Really, and so if we contact a congresswoman, let's say, and say, hey, this bill came up, contact your congresswoman. Even among Democrats, maybe we're going to get different ideas. And then she can make the decision. But you're right. I mean, Plymouth Dems have, I think their T-shirts, I'm not sure, democracy is a contact sport. We have to remember, we have to be active. And I've always thought we have never done a good enough job to actually even attend the Republican coffee hour. All we were worried, let's try to elect Democrats. And maybe that was so over, encompassing. It was such a big
it's the failure of the party over the past 10 years to actually be organized in a way that, produces wins. I mean,
that's what my whole campaign is about.
So
political organizing.
Well, we'll get to organizing the party in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I want to. What you just said there, though, is that you said you'd be even-handed between and I absolutely agree with the even-handed part. But just like in journalism, the journal being even-handed as a journalist doesn't mean one person says it's raining and the other person says it's not, and then you report both of those things. The job of a journalist is to open the door, look outside, and find out who's telling the truth.
Calls, yeah.
Right. Okay. And this is not an equivalent situation. There's one group of people that insists that other people not express their opinions and attacks them for expressing their opinions. And there's another group of people that says, look, let's have an open debate about this. Let's talk about these things in a realistic way, not in a simplistic way. Let's talk about what solutions look like and how the world really works, and let's have a discussion about that. And I'm confident from my position, I'm confident that we'll win that argument. And as a result, every time I see somebody trying to shut down that kind of discussion, or a broad discussion generally, what it says to me is that they don't think they can win the argument, so they want to silence people. And so my question is, what are we going to do, or what do you think can be done in terms of addressing the culture in the party that allows that kind of thing to happen far too often?
So we do have a top-down culture. And when you have a top-down culture, someone at the top is saying, don't do this or don't do that, or you're bad. I have to tell a not so funny story that I think maybe for the first time, the only time I remember in history, in my life, someone called me yelling and screaming at me. It was crazy. And I remember, and it was someone who's not a paid person in the party, but someone who's elected into a position in the party above me. And I thought, wow, that, I was organizing, I was part of Indivisible, organizing with Indivisible. She thought that was inappropriate, that they're not Dems, which they are, but it's a different story. And so I'm crazy. That was crazy. So I started to talk to people. I'm like, hey, this crazy thing happened. They're like, oh, yeah. And they had a story about being yelled at. And if we have a situation where that's occurring, that's because we have a top-down culture. We need a culture of as the chair, look, exist, organize. If someone is behaving as they shouldn't be, the chair has to address it. The chair has to call them privately, with love, and it's hard. Those are hard calls to make. I've had to make them in my own little Northville Dem. Generally, most people are reasonable. You have to ask people to apologize. Maybe they won't. But the other thing, I have called when someone behaved badly, and I've called the people offended, and I've apologized for them. Why not? What skin is it off my back? I didn't, but you know what? I'm sorry, as the Democratic Party, we shouldn't be doing this. My dear friend Susan calls us a cast of characters. We have all different personalities. Some are better than others. But I absolutely believe that as chair of the party, if you have people who are silencing people, you have to call them, contact them, bridge that divide. Now, honestly, that is probably a 24/7 job, right? I mean, how could one person? Right. But I think it is, and it'll take time. It is changing our culture to where all of the different groups matter. We exist. We respect each other. We respectfully disagree. And finally, change is hard. So people who have been in this party and had this party, and all of a sudden, these people from Northville, it's not supposed to be democratic. They show up. They want to take over. It's hard, and we worked our way in. I think with Indivisible now and the progressives and all the young people, I think we are going much quicker, and I think it's going much better. As chair, I would actively invite people who don't get along together to talk about it. There are professional people that will mediate. I would actively ask them to organize joint events. Okay. Let's say we had a joint training in Convention 101.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fabulous. We
Right.
need to, I mean, everybody needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
What if some of the labor unions and some of the progressives groups did a joint, and then we made people pull a tag. You know, it's like back to kindergarten. Pull a tag. You sit in that seat. You're not going to just sit with your friends.
Right.
You know, I mean, we can do active things like this.
Sure.
But we have to, and that is, there's a cultural. Now, I don't want to say I love the party. I love the Democratic Party, and I'm a proud Democrat. And we do so many things right. I believe that there are a segment of toxic people, and that's in every organization, in every family, and that we just have to address those people.
Okay. So I think that there's some good ideas there. I think it's going to be a difficult problem for a long time, because it's not just people outside the party structure. There's also people inside the party structure.
Oh, we're talking about inside. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm talking about the inside baseball.
You know, people that have significant power in the party structure. I'll give you an example. We were on the Rules Committee together.
Yes.
And you remember we were on the Rules Committee with Tim Hughes, who was then and has recently been reappointed as the chair of the Appeals Committee.
Okay.
Which is the organization that is specifically charged with enforcing the rules. Okay. I don't know if you were at the subcommittee meeting with him where we were talking about the unit rule. Okay. Do you know what the unit rule is?
Please refresh it.
So the unit rule is something that has existed in the Democratic Party since the 1830s under with Andrew Jackson and that time. And what it is, it's the practice of reporting the vote of a unit as unanimous, even when it's not unanimous.
Oh, yes.
Okay, and remember, every organization within the party is called a unit. So if your club is a unit, your caucus, whether it's a statewide or local, is a unit. Your county party is a unit. Your district party is a unit. The progressive caucus, the labor caucus, etc. All of these are units of the party, and the unit. What used to happen is that you'd have a vote. You'd have your unit meet before the party meeting, the regular party meeting. The unit would meet by itself. The unit would vote on on where the unit stood in relation to the vote that was going to come up in the party. And then, let's say if 51% of the unit voted one way and 49 voted the other way, the whole unit would be 100%, behind.
So it's the Electoral College.
So, well, what it is it's the majority. It's the majority, or sometimes a plurality, enforcing their will on the minority, and having a rule that says if you don't do that, then we'll kick you out. Okay, and let me just quote you what Tim Hughes, who's said. I'm quoting from the transcript. The Labor Caucus, Progressive Caucus, Education Caucus, they frequently have votes where they say, if you want to be part of this caucus, then you're bound by the outcome of the caucus. I don't think it's the role of the party to tell the caucuses how to run their votes. Now let me tell you, the MDP rules specifically say that to be a caucus, you have to have, to be a caucus, your rules must comply with the state party rules.
And the state party rules say no unit rule.
The state party rules not only say no unit rule, but they also say nothing that looks like a unit rule. For example, they say, not only do they say the unit rule is banned, they also say, and by the way, that's been since 1968 at the national level. That it's been banned. And one of the reasons it was banned is because it was part of what caused the debacle at the 1968 Chicago Convention.
Wow.
Okay. So not only do our rules at the state level say that the unit rule is banned, and that's following national policy, but our rules at the state level also say no unit shall have a rule that would require anyone to vote or to be recorded as voting contrary to their conscience.
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the problems with that is that there's another rule from the there's another rule from the DNC that says you can't have a secret ballot, which means that everybody at every unit of the party has to cast a public ballot, so that if there's anybody from, like if you have a unit that meets before the regular meeting,
Right. They know if you're.
and then you go and vote, they can watch you and they can figure
And that's
out.
a big issue.
That's a huge issue to me.
Yes, that's
So-
a huge issue to me.
Right. So
Yeah.
so let me just say, Tim Hughes.
And so wait, so one quick question. So would you argue the only reason we don't have secret ballots is so that units can control their vote, the way their voter, or
No, that's not
when
the
they're-
reason.
No.
My understanding of the reason that there are no secret ballots is because it used to be in the Michigan party, and it is true across I think all of the other state parties, but I don't know. I haven't been able to check everything for sure. It used to be that only precinct delegates could vote.
Right.
So they
and
were
we're the only
elected-
party. We're
Right.
the only party that allows members to vote.
Right. Okay. And when it was precinct delegates, those are elected representatives.
Right.
And so their votes should be public so that people can see how they voted.
So you can decide whether you want to vote for them next time,
That's right.
which makes total sense. Okay.
Now, there's some arguments against that
Yeah.
argument. In fact, there's some
See,
people that argue
interesting.
that when we went to public votes in the national legislature in the 70s, that is part of what contributed to the problem with money in politics, because it used to be there's tons of money in politics before, but now the people that are paying the money can actually see what they're getting.
They want to know if they're getting their money worth.
So there's
Wow.
there's a discussion to be had there, but that's a different discussion.
Okay.
My concern right now is if you're saying, we're talking about how the culture in the party is that we have some people that try to silence others.
Yes.
We have some real problems with that kind of thing, and we're talking about how it's not just in the general population of the party, it's also in positions of power. So here's a guy who I can't. I mean, he was the legislative director for Granholm. He's been union liaison, for a lot of different things. I have a hard time believing he doesn't know that this is what the rule is. Okay, that it's banned. Okay, he has a lot of experience in the party, all of that. You can read the party rules. It's very clear. There's no ambiguity about it.
Yeah.
And through the whole rules committee process, he attempted to inject ambiguity when we were trying to remove ambiguity. And he's now chair of the appeals committee. Okay, and there's other things. For example, he also thinks that chairs of units should be able to decide whether their membership gets to use proportional voting as the rules require, or whether they only get to use plurality voting, where the largest plurality or majority get to choose all of the seats in the whole party. So, I mean, can you understand why a lot of the new people in the party would look at his arguments that he makes, and like I said, I have the transcript, okay, and say, you know what, I don't know that I can trust the appeals committee to follow the rules.
We absolutely have to follow our rules. We absolutely have to. I'm pretty surprised that that could go on. I wasn't at the committee.
I don't think you were on the subcommittee where he made those particular arguments.
And I never traveled to Lansing because I leave for work very early in the morning, and I felt like I just couldn't do the drive. When you're on a conference call, it's very difficult. It's just not good enough. It's not good. I'm listening very hard.
Those meetings by conference call.
They were 4 hours.
Yeah,
they were insane.
If you haven't really lived with the rules and read through them and thought about how what they describe would actually work in practice, it's hard to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But
well, we have to. This is our supporting our values. This is again supporting our values. We have to make sure that we do it, and that's hard, and those are hard conversations to have. But And I would argue to if you have one particular person, to sit them down again with a mediator to be able to say, well, wait a minute, or wait a minute, to wherever.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
I think we have to be active. I think we have to be active in making peace, keeping peace, making peace. And I know people might think that's Pollyanna, but
So I just to cap that, by the way, there had been precedents set by the appeals committee going back decades that directly contradicted what the rules say. The one of the key things that came out of the rules committee we were on, though, is that we eliminated all of those previous precedents.
yes.
And so those
which-
are no longer
yes.
valid, so that they have to now look at the rules as they're written. Okay.
Right.
But we still have to watch out for Tim, because during that same conference, he insisted on and got other people to insert language that he interprets in a particular way that is not supported by anything outside of his own mind, as far as I can tell. That would allow him to try to make that same argument again. So I think it's really important that we watch that. And one of the other key things is that they now have the appeals committee now has to publish their decisions.
Yes.
And make them available to members. I tried to argue for it to be posted publicly on the website, but it's available to members and they're not secret. So I'll be making
again,
right.
That helps a lot.
Yeah. So Michigan Progressive will be making a request for any rulings that get made, and we'll post them on the web so everybody can see how the rules are being interpreted. So, but I'm sorry. I apologize that happens to be something that I'm particularly passionate
That's
about.
okay,
And we took some time on that, but I think it's really important about this conversation about how we're going to get a lot of people into the party and have them feel like they're actually part of the party, and that the party is fair, transparent, accountable, and democratic.
So I've been in a couple panels, and yesterday I was at Plymouth, and the question was, what are you going to do to be more transparent? And I said to the group of, and these are all my close friends, a lot of my close friends, it's our sister club.
Sure.
I said, I'm not sure if everyone realizes how much this matters to a certain segment of our party that feels like they are left out. I said, this really matters, and we have to acknowledge it and respect how much it matters to them. And we've got to fix this. And I know many people who are probably more establishment. The questions I've had is how are we going to bridge this? How are we going to fix this? And I've told them, I as chair, I will actively do it to the best of my ability.
So yeah, I mean,
And I believe not acting is acting. So if we ignore an issue, that's an action.
yeah, absolutely.
And that has consequences.
Sure.
And
Right. Yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, and I think from the perspective of, I think from any rational perspective that is interested in fairness, transparency, accountability, and democracy, the underlying key purpose of rules is to establish a basis of trust. Okay, and when we have people who are in positions of power, actively arguing prima facie against what the plain language of the rules says, and then those people are elevated to hold those positions of power repeatedly. It sends a message that the party isn't interested in following its rules, and that's a problem with the Democratic Party at every level. The Democratic National Committee sent their lawyers into court and argued that they don't have to follow the rules. You know about that court case. Okay, they argued that they don't have to follow their own rules. Now, I just want to point out, if you don't have to follow your own rules, what that means is whoever's in power gets to decide everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and so this is a problem in the party at the national level. What I've just described is an example of that problem in the party at the state level, and it's not just that. It's also things like financial disclosure, for example. Okay, so for example, under the rules, the MDP isn't even allowed to open a bank account without approval from the SEC. But when the SEC asks the chair to provide an accounting of where the $500,000 to pay off the FEC fine, for example, where that came from, okay, we're told that we're not allowed to know that. So you can't open a bank account without our permission, but we can't know what's going on in the bank accounts or even which bank accounts we have, because when that happened, it became clear that there were bank accounts other than what were being shown to us in the very, very tiny amount of information
30 feet away
that they're letting us see.
Yeah.
And you know, so what do you think about that? Is that an appropriate level of financial disclosure
Absolutely.
to the SEC?
And it was a similar question, and my answer then was to say this is a big issue, because people are concerned that we are accepting money from people and then we are acting based on this corporate money.
Yep.
So if we were to accept the money and to let people know we have it, and then if we act badly, well, then we know it's because, but maybe we don't act badly, even though we've accepted this money, and then maybe they won't give it to us next year because it's not fun. But that's okay. So what we really, and this was another interesting question last, we really need a new model for our fundraising. My belief is we need to give value as a party. How do we give value? Party building, training, helping precinct delegates, creating a community where people are happy to be there, where people feel like they're part. And then, and we've seen candidates who have not accepted PAC money. So I said, because we have a PAC, Northville Dems PAC. I said, does this mean we would still give our PAC money? And they said, well, no, your PAC is $20, $30 at a time of individuals, and that would be acceptable. We're talking about basically corporate PAC money. That we have to have a different funding. But the second thing, and this was said by all the candidates that were there last night, we really need to address the money in politics, the dark money. That is a huge other issue. And that's just a huge different issue.
So let me ask you, how big should the party be?
How big can we get it? How big can we get it?
How big do you think we can get
I'm saying 50,000.
Okay.
I'm guessing, I don't know how many we have, somewhere between 10 and 20, right? 15?
Yeah.
Something.
Right.
Why not? Why not? So I was standing, I'm very tall, and I was standing in the tipping point wearing heels out to see, we have a little playhouse, and I heard someone say, hey, there's Lisa the Democrat. I waved. So, I mean, people know I'm a Democrat. I write letters to the editor. There's been I've been in the paper, in our local paper, president of the Northville Dems. And I'm a proud Democrat. We need to have the kind of party that people throughout the state want to be part of. Yes, I am a Democrat. I'm a Democrat because I care about people, because I believe we are responsible for each other, and I think we can have where there's a common good. That's what we're talking about. So to do that, we're going to really have to do some things very different. I think we're going to have to be very digital to keep it simple so that people can join easily. My daughter, daughter's 25. I said, honey, you got to join the party. You can come vote for your mom. And she said she will. So she came back. She said, I'm not sure if I joined or not. I said, here, let me look. We actually signed her up twice. She's very computer literate. I'm fairly computer literate. We have to make it simple. And I think we could hit 50,000.
So
I think we could hit 50,000.
In the current situation, every new member costs the party $10.
I know.
At least.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
so
that it has to be more because the hours that the
people,
the
right,
administrative, yeah.
$10 is just
Yeah,
for the plastic card.
Right,
That's
right.
just a new thing.
Right,
It
right.
used to be $11, by the way.
Oh my God.
That's what we were told about the there used to be a sort of a
print it.
cardboard
Yeah,
thing
like
that
plastic that they would send it in the mail. Yeah.
it wasn't even plastic back. The first card that I got when I joined in December of 2016 was a sheet of basically sort of heavy construction paper that was perforated, and you could pull it out of there. And apparently, I was told that cost $11. So right now, just for the card, new members cost $10 to sign up, which means that if you want to go from 15 to 50 to 50,000, that's $350,000 just on membership cards. Do you think that's
Wait a minute, it's more than that, is? Or you're a mathematician?
It's 35,000. It's 35,000. 35,000 more people than we have now.
Yeah.
Times 10
Yeah.
is $350,000.
Gosh.
Okay, but let's point out, by the way, that we are a state of about 10 million people.
Right.
So if we had 50,000 members, we would be
not
all
that
of
many.
all of 0.5%.
Yeah, it's not that many.
Okay.
So we have to have a completely digital membership. You know, I was talking. We were talking before the pod started. Every time we as Democrats meet, we take out a tree at least. And think about it, all that lit thrown all over, the signs, and then let's think about the workers there.
Sure.
Do we clean up our garbage?
Sure.
That's not fair, you know? So, and that's not our values. If we care about the workers, we don't leave. You know, you would not go anywhere and leave garbage all over. But we probably walk out of there and just think whatever. Tape on the wall. So we have to live our values. My campaign, we're only doing business cards. I have a really nice website and Facebook, and I'm really standing strong on that. And you're a computer person. I think we could have some kind of a digital where every person can go online to find out about their membership, to sign up, to rejoin, to sign up for training, to take training, an app on our phone. I don't think it would cost $10 a person, because once you have the infrastructure,
it
you
costs
just
a few electrons.
Thank you. I like it.
Yeah.
A few electrons.
So
let's do it.
Well, and by the way, I put together a team that already did that. We already have the software. You can go to mdpquery.com and you can sign up there. And right now the party requires us to print a membership form and deliver a membership form. So like I delivered something like 900 membership forms. Just before the deadline.
That they
then have to have somebody type in. I have offered previously to provide it in an Excel sheet. No, they don't want that. That's not acceptable. When we were working with a campaign that bought the MDP lists, we also set up the infrastructure so that we could put that data into the database, and people could look up their membership and see what the status of the membership was. That's infrastructure that's already created.
Wow. So if I am chair, we will absolutely. When you come in, so I do have a 90-day plan.
Okay.
So the first 30 days is just investigate. Let's figure out, all of the accounts. What are our obligations? What are our assets? What are our liabilities? Then the next 30 days is it's part of a plan to kind of low-hanging fruit. What can we fix that we have some impact? What is just easy to fix? Let's try to make things better for people. And then at 90 days, you have to pick maybe 2 big things to do. I mean, change is hard. We have a lot of things going great, but maybe, who knows, if a lot of that digital is in that 60 days kind of low-hanging fruit, we can almost do it right away. But really, we have to be at the top of our digital game, and an app. I want an app. I want a Northville Dems app. Well, actually, we did try to come up with a Northville Dems app. A lot of people wanted it. We couldn't swing it, but an MDP app.
Sure, and if you design it properly, then you can have it be something that any for example, chartered club.
Gosh, can you imagine that?
Any unit could then use in the same way, locally. It's once you've got the basics of it, making that available in that way is not significantly more difficult.
So I've often talked to the party about, hey, I have all these people who give me money to join the club. Pretty confident they're Democrats. We publish our list. We found that list. I've found it. Someone found it on a Republican Facebook page saying, look at all the Democrats in Northville, and there were all our names. So that would be data I think the party would want to say, look, these are people we,
It's also concerning to me, though, that there's a lot of there are a lot of units of the party that charge a membership fee.
Yeah.
Even though the MDP itself forbids a membership fee.
But it is we do have free. We do charge, but we have a free membership.
And let me be clear. The state party rules are ambiguous on this. So people can interpret it can interpret it that way, and I think that's something that we ought to think about. But we get a lot of I've been signing up a lot of people to the party. The team that I just mentioned to you that worked on the Dana campaign leading up to the April convention, the endorsement convention. That team, plus a lot of other outreach that we did, and a lot of outreach that other people did, we signed up over 3,300 new members. Completely new members to the party, and people got yelled at because of how much it cost.
Well, you wouldn't get it under me.
Okay.
So I'll tell you, there, as a chair of my club, before I was chair, had a different membership chair. We called him Chuck Pay Your Dues Nichols. So he would, hey, are you a member? Did you join? He started publishing the list of who was a member. And people would contact him and say, Chuck, I'm a Democrat. Why isn't my name on there? He said, well, join the club. Now, we always have a free membership because we know there are people who can't afford it, and that is fine. We actually added high school is free and college is optional, $5. But that was just recently added. And when we had a young man come and said, hey, he's doing a youth caucus out of our Northville Dems. But we also have to understand that, it costs money to do things. Sure. But let's give people value. Like, I don't mind going to the restaurant and when I get my meal. And likewise, if I come to the Northville Dems and maybe these people only want to come to our social. We're doing our March 8th. We do our. It's a free social. It's at the American Legion Hall. Everybody brings appetizers, and we'll have some speakers. It's a fun night out, and maybe that's the only. And a lot of people will join. We always do it in the beginning of the year, and we get a bunch of members. Sure. But we want it. We want value. So
the other thing is that I think like for example at the last state central meeting, the party passed out a sheet that talked about how wonderful the one campaign was, and one of the top line number, the very first number at the very top left hand side of the page in big font said that there were 6,700. I can't remember 53 or 6,753 or something like that, but 6,700 volunteers. Okay, that means that not even half the members of the party volunteered. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people that volunteered may well not have been party members, and it's entirely possible that a lot of them still aren't.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one. Number two, 6,700 volunteers or a couple more across a state of 10 million is not doing well.
So they've gone
you
to
know.
paid canvassers, which I mean, I want to give people jobs, but I would like to give people jobs to work the van, to run our lists. That's what I struggle with. I mean, I've been doing the van for 10 years, but I do it every couple months, and I've made some really bad lists, and I think we have to meet people where they are, and we have to understand the ladder of volunteering. So maybe the first time they come, we do postcards. And then the next time they come, maybe we phone bank. Now, I just became friends with a woman named Lori Goldman from
I know Lori.
You know Lori, she's great.
She was one of the phone bank organizers for me when I was running Dana's campaign for the endorsement.
She's amazing. But you know what? They phone bank their own lists. I'm like, that's brilliant. Why should I phone back strangers? We want to, and maybe people have moved away, or, you know, or we can clean up our list, but maybe we can say, hi, this is Lisa from the Northville Dems. We're having a party on the 8th of March. Do you want to come? This is the address. Click, you know, you just leave a message. People don't pick up. But we have to meet people where they are. And the one campaign was specifically, they were only looking for canvassers and limited phone bankers. They only phone banked absentee voters. And so I think they didn't have as many. We had a ton. We did a huge lit drop. And the other thing we did was we had canvassers, and then we would have a driver, because some neighborhoods, there's just not many Dems, and that would kind of help a little if someone, especially an older person having, you know, mobility issues, they could drive, and we get the canvassing done much quicker.
So that's if you're gonna there's a couple of different things I want to talk about there. I want to talk about how to organize the party. That's a big deal, because right now we still have big problems with organizing effectively, and we only have about 15,000 members, and not even half of them volunteer. And now let me say, maybe they're volunteering in other campaigns and other stuff like that. I'm just saying that they didn't volunteer on the one campaign. But I mean, it seems to me that the way to drive this is you get as many members as you can, and you make sure that doesn't cost you a bunch of money, and then you have to have some process that brings them into the party, explains to them how things work, and how to get things done, how to volunteer, how to phone bank. You know, not necessarily those things come in particular packages, but also just how the party works, and how to organize your friends, your community, how to bring people together like that. And if you get a bunch of people into the party that you can then communicate with about that kind of stuff, like you said, you know, phone banking their own lists, there's no reason that the party can't take the lists and distribute them, you know, that come in, you know, to the various local clubs and so on, and that the local clubs
they do that if you ask.
Right.
So I'll ask, give me everybody who is an MDP member living in Northville.
Right.
Every year I do that.
Right. But for example, when precinct delegates want to go knock their neighborhood, they can't get that.
They
So
cannot
you know.
get it.
So
that's it. So the precinct delegates, I actually wrote a precinct delegate manual, and I didn't print it. It's flippable, but it looks like a book. It's 12 pages, and it has all of the details about how to get elected, what you could be doing, you know, the dates, just all of the legal organization. But what it lacks is, where do you get the list?
Right.
Because there is, maybe the best is if you have your local unit chair. And as a party, there is no reason why, especially we have, you know, if we did a summer precinct delegate push, to have, we have all kinds of interns, to have them, you know, I'm Lisa DiRado, Precinct 3 Northville, and they will send to my phone minivan, or give me a number, put this
Sure.
into minivan.
Right.
You know, this is your list. Get it done in 2 weeks or a week, and then we'll give you another section of your precinct.
Sure.
That is like party building 101. Like, how could we not be using our precinct? And they want to do it. We had training. We trained 200 people. We don't even have 200 precinct delegates. We had other people. I had people from St. Clair. I had people from all Oakland County, from all over Wayne County. And you know, they want to be trained.
Right.
I think training is powerful too, because it binds us, and I think people become confident. We had some dear friends. We kept encouraging them to come to the Democratic Party, and my friend kept saying, "I don't know anything. I don't follow the news close enough." Well, and so, I mean, we have some super well-read, super smart people in our midst, but a lot of people are, you know, average people, and you will learn, you know, eventually. We'll start with postcards, and you will just come on and join us, and you'll learn.
So, in terms of building that size of a party, and by the way, I think 50,000. You know, my friend Steve Friday has been talking about 50K by 2019 for a long time. We're not there yet. But 50. I would argue that 50,000 isn't even a lot. I mean, you know, there were, you know, there in terms of the activism that's going on. If the Democratic Party here in Michigan can't attract, you know, a lot more than that, then I think that I think that we really have to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it, and
I would
organizing
ask,
that. Yeah.
do they want? I think as chair, you have to decide that you do want that kind of a party. That's
Right.
the first question.
Right. Right.
Because some people might be happy or satisfied with a smaller, with you know, less potential, less issues, you know. And then the other question too, in talking to people about, you know, indivisible. I'll tell you, when I after the election, I was like on the ground, just devastated. Many people were. I'm certainly not alone. So then a friend of mine said, "Lisa, there's this thing called the Indivisible Guide. Can you figure out how to make it so that I can email it? Because I want to email it to anyone." So I PDF'd it, and oh my God. And I thought, okay, that is what got me like back out to, and it was December after the election. We met in Northville, Indivisible, in January. That they're amazing activists. A lot of women my age, older, some men too. I, as the chair of the party, I certainly am not looking to take over an Indivisible, or you know, no.
We want a strong and resilient ecosystem.
Yes.
Of many groups, both inside the party and outside the party. I do a lot of organizing in both inside and outside the party.
But understand that different groups have different, they have different things that they do. They have different tasks. They have a different place. So I don't know if you knew, on January 3rd, Indivisible in 100 people those are our people. Indivisible in Ferndale, they had a huge mass action protest. I probably saw it on Facebook. Pretty cool. I mean, that's cool.
Right.
And you know what? So we invite them. If you would like to participate, you can join the Michigan Democratic Party and have a voice because we have to understand that, you know, the Northville Dems are our unit, but we're just a club, a unit. But the Michigan Democratic Party, has responsibilities or rules that are part of election law. They are they're at a different spot.
Right, and that's and I mean, actually, that's something that's really important when we think about what the relationship is between the party and the government, because basically the two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, have agreed on certain things over the past 150 years, particularly about that they're should be rules that make it harder for other parties to come along and challenge them.
Okay.
I mean, you can look at the way that election law is set up to favor a two-party system.
Yeah.
And there's lots of research that demonstrates that. And there's been pushes for a long time to change that. And right now, I mean, it's good to see the Democrats in the federal legislature, for example, pushing voting system reform.
Yeah.
For example, automatic voter registration, same-day voter registration, these kinds of things that make it easier to vote. There's a bunch of other provisions in that, but that would be a longer story. But so like in the party right now, we don't do that. We advocate, our platform says that we want, same-day registration and automatic registration for civic elections. When it comes to voting in the party, you have to register 30 days beforehand. Do you think that's appropriate or not?
I don't know, because the reason is that we are concerned that an outside group would come, like back when the LaRouche Democrats did take over as really kind of fringe groups.
Well,
would you be concerned at all that
no,
that
not
no.
at all.
And
I would
please tell me.
Sure. Well, first of all, if we're afraid of that, we have a lot bigger problems. Okay, if we can't turn out enough people regularly that are Democrats to our Democratic Party meetings,
yeah,
that's us failing.
Yeah, we're failing on a different level.
And that's
you're
failing on a whole
right.
different level.
You're right.
Okay, so I mean, I've heard these arguments.
Yeah, that's the argument I hear.
Right, and I just and when I push back on it, the next argument is they say, well, but the rural counties, where there's just a few Democrats out there, that could really be a problem there. And my thought is, we have if we're having trouble motivating people to come out and participate in a party that they at least ostensibly believe in, okay? Are we really afraid that there's going to be more people that are going to want to come out and participate in a party that they don't believe in, that they think is not where they want to be?
You know what? It's funny because my husband, being in law enforcement, retired, and talking about this crazy notion that undocumented people will vote. Like undocumented people, said they want to avoid anything
that might put them in that kind of,
it is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you know what? I would absolutely take that under advisement, because it's the exact same, exact same argument I've heard. And now here I am.
Let me just say, by the way, the next argument is that they say, well, but they'll organize, they'll pay people. Okay, and to which, well, not even that. Even if I could certainly imagine there would be people that would take money to do that. Sure, but here's the thing: if they're going to organize that well, they can do that 30 days in advance.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
yes, right. You're right. If they really did, right.
So it seems to me that it is a policy driven by fear, rather than principle or reality.
It's a symptom of a culture.
Yeah.
It's the same problem.
It's a symptom of a culture that's lost so much over the past 40 years.
Yeah.
And I think largely because we haven't fought for it. And I know that there are people that are going to be upset that I said that, but consider...
But wait, no, please, continue, because I'm very interested in that.
Well, consider, for example, Ocasio-Cortez coming out and saying, hey, you know what, the top marginal tax rate on people making $10 million or more ought to be 70%.
Right. It was not that long ago.
Well, like it was, sometimes up to 94% between the end of World War II and the Reagan era. 70 to 94% covers that range from the end of World War II, actually from before World War II, through 1980. I think it was after 1980 that it got reduced from 70%,
Right.
which it was
right.
at the time.
Thank you, Reagan.
And that period saw the largest expansion of the middle class
Exactly.
in our history.
Right.
So it's not it's not a and you have people that make different arguments about whether that particular way of taking cash out of the economy and putting it towards social purposes rather than private purposes. I mean, that's the decision that we're making. Where are we going to put our resources?
Well.
Okay. She's making that argument, and the fact of the matter is that there's no reason you couldn't have made that argument, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. In fact, we had made that argument, and we had won that argument.
Yes.
Okay. Then people weren't willing to stand up and fight for that argument.
And that was the beginning of what we lost our union support.
Let's just say, we lost the unions in 1947 with the Taft-Hartley Act. That was voted for.
Really?
Right. Yeah, that's what allows there to be. Without the Taft-Hartley Act, you would not have quote unquote right to work.
Wow.
Okay, it comes out of the Taft-Hartley Act, and the Taft-Hartley Act was supported by 106 of the 177 Democrats in the House at the time, and by 20 of the 42 Democrats in the Senate at the time. And it was passed with those votes over the president's veto.
Over Roosevelt.
No, this was 47. So it was. My brain isn't functioning. Truman. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So.
Wow.
So the reason that we have right to work is because Democrats overrode the presidential veto on Taft-Hartley. I mean that's where that's where a lot of this stuff started, and of course got worse in a lot of ways since then. So when I say that we need to fight for these things more. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm talking about stuff like like Bernie Sanders. I mean, one of the key things I think that Democrats have to realize is that what happened in 2016 was a sea change in the political discourse in our country. And I'm not the first person to say this by any means, but what happened is Bernie Sanders started running saying, I'm a democratic socialist, and I believe that healthcare is a human right, and all of these free college and all of that. And a whole bunch of people stood up who have been thinking that for a long time, thinking these kinds of things for a long time, but thought that other
there
people...
was no platform.
Yeah, well, that they couldn't talk about that in public. I grew up in the 80s, and I became politically conscious in the 80s, and I could not have a conversation with people that didn't already agree with that I already knew. I'm sorry. Let me back up. I could not have a conversation with people who I didn't know already agreed with that without getting shut down. And it wasn't necessarily that the people didn't agree with me, it was that they were afraid of saying so. Okay? And what Bernie Sanders did is he stood up and said, hey, I believe in all of this stuff. And a whole bunch of people stood up and said, yeah, we do too. Looked around and said, oh, wow, look,
there's a lot of
bunch
us.
of us.
Yeah.
Okay?
Interesting.
There is a constituency for ideas like that. And you know what? It's the biggest constituency in the country. And we claim to represent that as Democrats, but very often we don't. Like, for example, when we won't even have a plan, we won't even implement a policy to have a plan for global climate change. Yeah. So that's, I mean, how do you think we change that?
Slowly. I mean, I'd like to say fast, but I think I've changed personally, you know. I was a Hillary Clinton supporter. When in 1980, I was and went away to college. I told my professor, I went to a professor, chemistry professor, said, I'm going to be a chemistry major. And he told me I was taking a job away from a man who needed to take care of his family.
Wow.
And I mean, 40 years later almost, it's still like a punch in the gut. And I had this amazing high school chemistry teacher who was amazing. And he's like, Lisa, be a chemist, you'd be great, you get it. And then I see this guy, and I can feel that shock.
Sure.
So I went and I got an A. I got an A- from him. I was happy. I was like, I'm like, I didn't let it stop me. But
Sure.
how many other women did he
Sure.
discourage?
Right.
So years later, my daughter's a chemist, and my other daughter's a geologist. Their world is a little easier. But change is hard. Change is hard. And as a feminist, I did not even understand until I went to the Women's Convention, intersectionality. I didn't really get that. All I got is this man. My husband's like, you always are anti-men, and now I get it. It's not not just that man. It is a whole system.
So what do you? Just to build off of that, what do you think about the controversy right now about Rashida Tlaib?
Oh, I love her. Yay.
Yes.
We as a party need to stand with her.
Absolutely.
So Republicans, they lean into anything that anyone does. And how could we not? So the funniest thing, after the election, friends of mine, women older than me, like these retired teachers, they're just dropping F-bombs. It was shocking. There was a level of anger that I was pretty surprised. I was angry. A lot of us were angry. And I think we had better stand with her if we're not.
Right.
Shame on us. And the party should come out and say, well, Nancy Pelosi did.
Sure.
So
Right.
good for her.
Yeah, that's true.
But
So I just my point is that is entirely racism and sexism,
Absolutely.
and xenophobia and religionism. I'm not sure. I'm not. I don't have a good word for that. I'm looking for one. But the fact of the matter is that powerful white men say that kind of stuff all the time. And we don't have people in the party arguing, well, she needs to not do that because then people won't want to organize with us, which is one of the things that I hear, that I've been hearing from the establishment, mostly establishment people or more established, but even some people who are ideologically progressives, unfortunately, it's mind-boggling to me that people still have this problem of standing up and saying, you know what, she's a human being, and
she has free speech.
Not only does she have free speech, but it's a perfectly normal expression of anger in our culture.
Yeah.
And she's expressing it in a way that is perfectly legitimate. I mean, it's not like it's fake anger. It's not like it's,
Right.
there's a crisis on the southern border.
Yeah.
I have to have 10 minutes
Did
of
you
prime
see
time.
that? Oh my God.
You know,
it was painful.
You know what it reminded me of? And I like a lot of I like some odd movies, but there's a Kelsey Grammer movie called Down Periscope. I don't know if it's a comedy. Kelsey Grammer, and there's a character in there who's the second in command and who tries to mutiny. And he gets on the loudspeaker and he makes this speech about how things are terrible and you should all gather behind me and all of that, and he goes this whole thing about how these people love me, and the next scene is they make him walk the plank. Not really, but that's what it seems like. They throw him off the ship anyway. But I mean, the whole thing through that whole thing just reminded me of that scene. And
amazing.
But
so if we can't stand with our own Dems, But that said, if we have a situation where we have Democrats, and we had this difficult situation in Northville, someone who ran and had a past arrest record for serious violence,
sure,
not convicted but arrested, as Democrat, we have to, again, live our values
Yeah.
and say, and I think the party did do that. I know we had in Oakland County the woman who was arrested, and the party did stand and say, hey, hold on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we have a situation actually. I think the court hearing is tomorrow about about Anuja who ran
Yes.
about and it's this ridiculous again racist prosecution.
Yes. But think about it. Think about the men that have been in charge, and nothing personal. Men have been in charge for so many years, and all of a sudden they have women like Nancy Pelosi, who is fierce,
Absolutely,
and Rashida Tlaib, who is fierce, and they're
Ocasio-Cortez,
who is fierce. They are afraid, and who are they going to go against? I was really upset, very upset with the way Nancy Pelosi was treated, because she is incredibly effective. Now, if you say we should let someone else have a chance, well, I'll give you that argument. That's a different argument. But yet, she is incredibly effective. And look, let there be a vote. Okay, we'll vote.
You're talking about for
chairmanship.
For the House speakership.
Yes, House speakership. And then she was pretty much the first one I ever saw really put Trump in his place. And I thought it was pretty good.
So I'll say I was very skeptical of her as House Speaker for a number of reasons. One of them was because I had not seen her handle Trump in public, and I did not see any evidence that she would do well at that. She's done really great at that.
Yeah.
When I'm wrong, and full credit to her for that. But the more substantive reason that I was not happy with her is because I thought that she would do exactly what she did with the Green New Deal and legislation like that. It's one thing to say this particular plan to handle climate change isn't going to work. It's a completely different thing to say we're not even going to figure out what the plans could be. We're not even going to try to make a plan.
Yeah.
We're going to make it as difficult as we can politically possibly make it. So I think she had to do something to try to appease, the people that were putting pressure on her. But what she did was really just appeasement. It wasn't actually, a bold proposal to do the research and figure out what the plan should be.
So is there any room within the current system to come up with something of value? What Nancy Pelosi set up.
So the answer is yes, possibly. But what she's done is she's structured it in a way that gives all of the people who currently have a lot of power, largely because of their bank accounts. Okay. In other words, and especially, the thing we talked about before, where people that have conflicts of interest are apparently going to be allowed on this thing, and not only that, but then it has to work its way through all of the different committees that have this have the different pieces of it split up among them. Okay, because what we're talking about is you need a comprehensive plan, because it's not just a question of one particular piece of industry or one particular piece of public works. It's a question of how we power everything, because the way that we're powering it now is destroying the capacity of the planet to support human life. And in the face of that, and in the face of that science, for somebody as intelligent and powerful as Pelosi to look at that science and say, no, we're not going to make it easy to make a plan. We're going to make it as difficult as possible without doing nothing, which is about where we're at. So we made it about as difficult as possible without doing nothing to make a plan. And to me, that is, let me just be frank, that's evil. I'm not going to shy away from that word. Either you believe the science or you don't. And if you believe the science, we have a very limited time to do something very significant.
Yeah, we don't know.
And if you don't believe that, then you should come out and say, I don't believe that.
Right.
Okay, and then we can deal with a different situation.
Yeah.
But if you're telling me you're smart and you've read and you've looked at the science and you've had the reports and you agree that the science, is right, even if it may be, off by a little bit here, the best science we have says we need to do something really quick.
Oh.
Okay.
The best science says we may have missed the
Right.
deadline.
Right. That's entirely possible. And so when you have a group of people who are taking money from people whose money in
Right.
large part depends on taking more of that carbon out of the ground and putting it into the atmosphere, which is what's killing the planet, I don't see how you look at how you look at them and say, well, yeah, I guess it's just reasonable to make it this difficult instead of this difficult to create a plan, not even to implement the plan, but to create a plan.
Wow. So climate change is, it's even, we've run so many town halls. We rarely get people to the climate change ones, which is shocking. You'd think, we have people who, in Northville, it's just so painful. It is just so scary. That said, we should, I think Democrats, we don't always understand the slippery slope, take every little piece we can. I think Republicans have been much better at putting, and this is how they've been successful to basically almost, decimate our protection for a safe and legal abortion. Putting in a little teeny wording, a little teeny part of a bill to reset the normal, and then moving from there. I think. I mean, it is. I don't know.
But here's the thing: we don't have the time to do that anymore. The science says we don't have the time to do that. So when I was opposing Pelosi, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't have necessarily a good option who else to propose, because there is a lot of institutional knowledge that's required to navigate how the institution functions, and to be effective at that. But Pelosi is great at that. No question. But what she's doing right now is she's using that knowledge to, instead of put stuff together so that we can actually do the job that's necessary according to the science. And she's saying, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to piece it out all of these different ways so that the path to actually getting, to a plan, not actually implementing the plan, but just getting a plan, okay, is so convoluted that it has incredibly high chances of failure. And there's no reason. There's no political reason. People across the aisle support the Green New Deal. 57% of conservative Republicans approve of this, and it was 64% of Republicans overall.
So we're back to the as citizens, as a party, are we going to ask our
not ask? They work for us. We need to stop asking. It's not an ask. This is one of the top-down thing. I see a lot of people in front of politicians or famous actors or different things like that, and they don't, they react to those people. And that's a feature of a top-down culture.
You're right.
That it instills in us this way of this sense of deference that we're supposed to give to to people in positions of power. That's what the king wanted, and they would enforce that. We don't necessarily enforce it that way anymore, but we do enforce it socially, because if you stand up to a politician and you're clear and direct and forceful, people will tell you you're being rude. Especially if they like that politician. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm being rude under these circumstances to say that to stall the creation of a plan, not actually implementing it, just at least the plan, is evil. I mean, that's a delaying tactic that makes it more and more likely that larger and larger and larger numbers of people are going to be killed.
Yeah, well, this is...
that could be avoided.
It is just so painful. It's so difficult. We had an amazing speaker, a professor for U of M, and we generally will get 80 or 90, and there were about 30 people there. And, that's embarrassing. And I had worked on turnout. I think as Democrats, we don't always do a good job of trying to get people, reminding people, It's like, it's just terrible.
So I want to go back a little bit to some of the Michigan Party stuff, particularly.
Okay. Yes.
So organization. You've talked about you don't want it to be top down.
Right.
So can you give me other than just we bottom up, can you give me more of a description of of how you think the party ought to be organized?
So I would see me as the chair, as an organizer, to have staff that also organized. I would see our job is to serve the units, to serve the organizers. And we should be a service organization. We should be training them. We should be, everybody wants van access. I don't think so. I think the van is a tool. Like, does everybody need to be able to run a certain, hard, difficult computer program? No. If we have people to do it, then the party, when you need it, you say, give me this with this parameter, and I send you the number, and you put it in your minivan. And that's just if you were really a service organization, you would say, how can you expect, you give a local club the van and to let them cut a decent list? Have you ever walked with a bad list?
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than walking with a bad list. You lose volunteers.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
we need experts in van doing the van.
Well, but here's the thing is that let me ask you a different way. Who do you think should have van access?
People who can, I think. Well, I mean, what
should
do you need?
Should precinct delegates have van access to the van for their precinct at least?
No, because they can't. What precinct delegate can learn their van enough to actually run the list? The precinct delegate should have the list anytime they want it.
Okay.
But they should say, look, I don't have a lot of time. I want to do it. Can you just give me, let's talk about it. Maybe we're going to take 70 to 100 in the van. I'm going to take the good Dems. Or maybe I'm a new precinct delegate and I want it to be easy for them. I'm going to send them to people that I know will be nice to them, and I'm going to give them 70 to 100. So that would be the discussion. They should have access to the data anytime they want, but we need experts to do a good job of making the lists.
So one of just this past election, there was a problem with that because the experts decided that they didn't have enough people to hit the most important areas according to their expertise. But here's the thing about that is here's the thing about that is that if you're not giving local people control, then you don't have a bottom up organization.
Yeah.
They have, so.
Well, if some organization had someone who's good at the van, I would absolutely give it to them.
Or if you had a training for precinct delegates who wanted to be able to use the van, it's not that hard to figure out how to use the van. It's a couple-hour training.
So for some people it would be much easier.
Sure. Well, and the
to
other
run
thing
a good
is
list,
right,
you can get through it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is that then you have support for that.
Yeah.
You have a hotline that says,
So,
if you have a problem.
Yeah. So what I've wondered, I've asked this: why don't we have a template? So you could have, like 3 templates. I want to do persuasion. I want to do only strong Dems, or I want to do, both.
Right.
And then you hit the template for my precinct. I'm going to do the template. Boom! I get it. Here's my number.
Right. So I think that's great. That's a great place to start. But I would also say that the precinct delegates and the other people in their local communities know their local communities better than any expert is ever going to know
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
And so they need to be able to have the ability to create their own template or create their own lists. And I agree that some people will have an easier or a harder time learning how to use that. But my question is, do you believe that anybody who wants to be able to do that should have access to the resources to learn how,
Absolutely.
and then to be able to have the access to the system so that they can apply that knowledge and do what they need to do in their local community.
Absolutely, but I'll tell you the reality of being a club chair in charge of precinct delegates.
Sure.
So I haven't had anyone who, I just have people who want their list.
Right.
This time so previously the coordinated campaign was literally a coordinated campaign. We did not have a coordinated campaign this year. So the one campaign had they were in charge of getting our statewide elected, and they were hugely successful. We elected them all. So that's great. But for Get Out the Vote, they had their Get Out the Vote. We had the state house had a Get Out the Vote. The state senate had a Get Out the Vote. The Western Wayne clubs, we had our own Get Out the Vote.
Sure.
Because I was lucky that for Northville, Matt Colasar's campaign person, he actually cut my turfs. The one campaign had only targeted 3 or 4 of our 14 precincts. We were going to go to all 14. You know, I mean, then President Obama used to say, we need to not lose badly in some places.
Well, we need to contest. We need to contest the election by getting our ideas out there and making contact with people. And maybe this time we improve, by a few percent. And next time we improve by a few percent. We can't always be focused on what are we going to be able to do this time. We need to win this time as much as possible.
Right.
But if that's the only thing that we're focused on,
if we're only
over the long term,
yes.
we're getting worse and worse and worse in places that, in a good year like this year, for example, if we had been doing that kind of thing for the last 10 years, when we had this year, we probably would have flipped a bunch more seats.
Oh yeah, we should have. Well, the next House district over that has one precinct in Northville, Kelly Breen lost by 591 votes. Mark Brewer called that political malpractice. I mean, we actually, it was a woman from Indivisible who took charge of Precinct 2 Northville, Oakland County, and she knocked it. She got volunteers to knock it. She found some extra data, from some extra lit. I mean, that she did amazing work, but it just wasn't enough. I can't believe we can't find those. So we absolutely have to play everywhere. We have to play no one would have expected Western Wayne County to flip. And I know people say, oh, demographics, suburbs, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but we had party infrastructure. So that all of this other good stuff rested on our backs. And we were ready and we were strong. And this is not me. This is hundreds of people that have been organizers there, and we have those people everywhere. We just haven't given them the resources.
So, do you think that, for example, we should? We haven't talked really about how to do the fundraising that you're talking about.
Yes,
we definitely need to do that. Need to do significant fundraising to be able to do some of the things that we're talking about. Do you have so two things about that? Number one, I want to ask you about how you want to do the fundraising, and the other one is I want to ask you if you think that for right now the MDP chair is a paid position, which allows the chair to do an awful lot more work on party organizing and stuff like that than they could if it was a volunteer position.
Yeah.
The same can be said of the chairs of the congressional districts and the counties. And at least those are units of the party that have to be there in state law. Okay.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So, do you think that we should have paid chairs in those in those positions, and or that we should have paid organizers year round? If it's not the chair, it doesn't necessarily have to be the chair. The point is to have the party in each area organized that by somebody who can really spend their full time and attention on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question was about fundraising. People give money to people they know. I think the chair of the party, you'd better be someone who likes people, and someone who is a believer, is passionate. I think the chair should spend a lot of time on the road, and years ago Mark Brewer did do this, and even Lon Johnson to a good extent. But I think by traveling the state, making the case for it, you should be proud to be a Democrat. Here's some training. This is what we're going to do. Here's the app. Here's how you join. You know, here's how we're going to help your club, help your club organize it.
Sure.
And when you talk about, I'll tell you, as a club chair, keeping the member list, if there is some online way to easily do that, man, that would be tied to the Secretary of State data. And that would be really, really nice, because we pay for something to do that, which is a big cost, but we're big enough to pay.
So yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, if you look at, for example, the platform that Michigan for Revolution slates ran on in the 2017 party elections, you'll find all of that stuff. It talks about organizing. You know, it talks about the state party creating a backbone of services that all of the different units all across the state can then use and have free access to, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel on all of these things all the time, and so that they can have access to more tools and resources than they can on their own without that service there. And not only to have that service there, but to have support for that service, so that, you know, these all of these clubs can, you know, not only know that it's there, but also get help using it.
So if you are offering value, people will pay. I mean, you go to the restaurant, you will pay. You go to a concert, you pay. I think they said Disney World, the cheapest ticket is $100 a day.
Yeah.
Think about that. And if as a party to give $100 a year for your party membership, that would seem like a lot of money. But yet you'll go to Disney World. I mean, maybe we will have value. But the second thing is, absolutely, you know, there was a time when there was regional people paid back when I started around, and they were resources, and they helped, and they did stuff, technical stuff. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So talk a little bit more in more detail about, you know, how to raise the money. I mean, you know, so what do you think about that?
I think we can. I think, well, to begin with, we will certainly you know, get money from the people we still have. And I would be for full disclosure of corporate money we're getting. I don't know what corporate money we're getting. There's, you know, it may be worse than we think, or it may not be as bad as we think. So I think signing up people, I think asking people to do a small monthly donation, maybe it's $3 a month, maybe it's $5 a month, which is a cup of coffee. If they felt like they had value, then they're never running out of, then their membership's never ending. I think we could do something like that.
Well, that's another thing about, you know, the way that the party has used membership for a long time as a means of fundraising. And so, for example, you know, the membership form, yes, you can join for free, it's in the rules, but the membership form doesn't actually tell you how to do that, and it gives every impression, both the one that you print out and the one that's online.
You would better pay. Yes.
You know,
you're not sure if you're really a member. So we should maybe say, look, this is join the party here. Can you donate? You know, and have it to be a two-step process.
And by the way,
and that is, you're right. Intellectually, that is a different. You know, look, we accept people, but here, you know, do we have enough value? You know.
So yeah, I mean, so I think that we have. I would argue that we need to create value in more ways than that. We need to do events to draw people in. We need to do stuff that's not just about please show up and do a bunch of work.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah.
And not aimed just at party people. Like there were a bunch of holiday parties that were great. I had a great time. And love that. But to do stuff that's more is more geared towards public participation. And education and public service, things that we can do. For example, I think the DSA has a great thing where they do like light bulb workshops, so that you can pull in and get your tail light bulb changed for free or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure how well it's worked out. Maybe it didn't work out for them, but I think it worked. I think that I've been told it worked out pretty well.
So,
but different things like that to do service in the community, not just showing up at the door when we're trying to get people out to vote, but showing up at the door when there's showing up at the door when there's something important going on in the community, or having events where people come together, and it's not just listening to some politician speak. As much as we may want to do some of that, we have events where there's some activity going on that's broader than what the party wants, that has something more to do with what the community wants.
So we have a pretty firm rule in my club that we put a timer on our speakers.
Yeah.
And so we set it generally at 5 minutes and then 10 minutes of questions. Because if you're a politician and you can't get it done in 5 minutes, you're failing. You had better be able to, you're preaching to the choir,
Especially, right.
Especially then, it's not like it's some big policy thing.
Right.
And I think we do a favor to the people who come through our door, because they have better think about, what am I going to say that has an impact. And the second thing I said, I heard a great suggestion that we as Democratic clubs, we could have potentially office hours where we help people. We have some people that have, like my husband's retired from Social Security, and we have other, retired people, retired lawyers, who could get people who have questions to the right agency, to make calls with them, to help people. And a lot of times those are the most marginalized people ever.
Right.
And so, I mean, that is on the same. So in Northville, we have a lot of fun. We rake leaves, like little things. And then the Historical Society, special thanks to the Northville Democratic Club for, cleaning up the leaves. And that, again, we are that's our beautiful spot in Northville. We are taking care of our spot, and that's living our values.
Sure. I think that's great. I mean, I think that there needs to be more of that kind of community activity across the state.
But to do that, you need a strong party structure.
Yes.
It has to start with a leadership team, a board that can organize an event, that can, and to do that, again, the lists, like you need people help setting up lists, member lists, social media, websites,
Right. And to get that kind of participation, you have to be an organization where people feel like they're welcome and respected and wanted, and that it's not just controlled from on high.
Absolutely.
That they have a real voice in what's going on. And there are, we talked before about problems with breaking the rules, but there are also some rules that are in place that cause a lot of distrust because they put a top-down structure on the party. So for example, we have a rule that says that State Central Committee members must be elected by proportional voting. Okay.
Oh yes.
Okay.
I know where you're going with this.
Okay. Must be elected by proportional voting. But then we have another rule that says that a simple majority, so 50% plus one of the state central committee that was just elected by proportional voting, can add as many officers at large as they want. Those officers don't have to be chosen under the rules. They don't have to be chosen from among those people that were elected to be on state central. But once they're appointed by
the chair,
appointed by the chair and approved
by state central,
by
right.
just a majority,
right.
no proportionality, they have a vote on state central and on the executive committee of state central.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that completely destroys the proportionality.
Yep.
We just had our membership across the state elect people in proportion to their numbers to represent them, and now a simple majority of that body adds as many votes as they want, so that proportionality is destroyed. It's as if imagine if the Republicans in the Senate by a vote of 51 out of 100 could add another 80 members to the Senate. Okay, that's the situation that we have in the State Central Committee right now.
So how would you fix that?
I would fix that. There's a number of ways you could fix it. Number one, you could require that officers of State Central have to be elected from within State Central, so that anybody, you wouldn't be adding
you're
somebody.
Not doubling.
They don't
yeah.
get an extra vote just because they're on
vote.
State Central and they're an officer.
Okay.
Okay, that's one way that you could do it. Another way you could do it is you could change the rule that says that when you're an officer, you automatically get a vote.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
You know,
Yeah.
that's another way to do it.
What is the the responsibility of the officers to kind of advise the chair and the executives?
Well,
do they actually, or can they advise and still have a responsibility there, but not necessarily vote on those decisions? That's not the worst idea.
Sure. So here's the thing that happens with that. For example, when progressives were concerned about dark money, about this $500,000, and there was a budget coming up, and they have to get the budget approved by State Central. That's part of the rules. Okay? And we said, hey, we're not going to vote for the budget until we know what the heck's going on with the finances.
Yeah.
And the response that we got, well, if you don't vote for it tonight we'll call a special meeting of the executive board and they'll pass the budget.
So they could have passed it without State Central.
That is exactly what the party leadership told us.
Wow.
Told me specifically.
Wow. So we I think I want us all to get along. I want our issues to be fighting, the people who want to fight the Republicans and not fight within. I know there are difficult ways that we can get through this. Do you think it's many people who are really causing a lot of the issue, or do you think it's a handful of? How pervasive is this? I guess that's my question.
Well, so I think that there's a number of levels. I think that there are a number of people who are used to things being done the way that they've been done, and leadership has not often been challenged. And so a lot of people in the party are not comfortable with leadership being challenged because we are in a context of significant threat, and they feel that they feel that challenge to the traditional leadership as a further threat. And
I mean, I've come across that.
Sure.
People are there. There's been some question like, why would you run? Why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just running. I mean, I'm not. There's no threat. I'm just running and.
Right. And the thing is that so let me just finish answering your question, because it's a long answer and I think it's important to get it out there and discuss it. So I think there are a lot of people that just, give you an example of that. When I first ran for State Central Committee, I had a number of people basically, say to me, "Who the hell are you to run for State Central Committee?"
Wow.
And my answer was, "I'm a member of the party and I'm running for a position, to represent people in my district who align with the kinds of things that I'm talking about, because they're members of the party too.
Right.
Why is this even a question?"
Right.
Okay. But I had people literally screaming in my face,
Yeah.
saying, "I've been here 6 years.
Yeah.
I've never run for State Central. What gives you the right to do that?" And my question to them was, why didn't you run? And the answer was, because I was told that I'm not allowed to run until I've put in my time. And I said, "Show me where it says that in the rules."
You were told wrong. So
Yeah.
so again, and that's just our culture. There's no circumstance under which we should yell at anyone. There's like no, and I've heard it. I've heard it from multiple. I've been yelled at. I'm
Right.
shocked. I thought it was
Right.
I thought it was one
Right.
particular incident,
Right.
but I can say that if you have someone at the top who does not behave that way, it's funny because my husband was a Republican when I met him, and
Okay.
we got married. So, and he's in law enforcement.
Sure.
So my kids would see us fight mostly over civil liberties, and he really changed his mind, seeing so
Sure.
much more, and
Right.
people grow, and if you've never been exposed to something, you don't. So, but even we have kind of a peaceful house and a peaceful life. I'm not going to yell at anybody. I won't. If I hear of someone yelling, I'll call them and ask them to behave nicer. And,
Well,
and maybe
but-
we talk to our leaders, even our chairs of our districts, to say, hey, don't let this happen. We don't
Right.
have to. These are volunteers. Do you understand the organizer-volunteer social compact? They're doing it for free. You don't have to yell at them.
Well, the other thing is that it assumes a hierarchy.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
So, and there,
that's you hit it on the head.
right. It assumes a hierarchy that that there's no place for in an organization that's really bottom up.
But bottom up is, let's talk about serve. So as chair,
Sure.
really as chair of the Northville Dems and the coordinator of our Western Wayne, I mean, I am doing work,
Sure.
for people, and I'm serving them to try to
Absolutely.
because if I always joke, there's two kind of people in my world: people who help me elect Dems and people who don't help me elect Dems. If you're one of the people that help me elect Dems, I want you to be happy, and I want you to come and continue to,
So, but not just Dems though, but Dems that that are going to actually work to fight for our values that we talked about at the beginning. Right?
And you're right on that. But let's talk about this. Once a politician gets elected, what do they want? To get elected again.
Well, then those are the people we shouldn't be electing,
No,
because what they
but
ought to want
is the greater good.
Is to serve the common good and the public
Yeah.
interest, which is what they were elected to do by their constituents.
But I think we can keep pressure on I think, and that's again, we have to keep, once a person's in office, we have to ask them to say, this is what we want from you, and
I'll say again, from the
ask,
Lakoff perspective,
not
it's not ask.
Yeah,
they
to
work for
tell 'em,
us.
this is what we want,
Right.
Yeah, you're right. No, exactly. We have to tell them.
Right. I mean, so I want to hit on a couple of the other things that are law that are legal in the party, that
Okay.
are according to the rules, that really have real issues in relation to what you're talking about. For example, again, talking about State Central, right now, if you can get right now, State Central people can get proxies from other people in their district, okay, and show up and have 10, 20 proxies in their hand, so they've got a whole bunch of votes. At the same time, at the state convention, when State Central is elected, we elect delegates and alternates. Okay. Right now, the standard practice in the party is that proxies are seated before alternates, and it seems to me that the person giving their proxy is failing to represent their constituencies accurately.
Yeah.
Well, if they prefer that their proxy be used ahead of somebody who was actually elected by their same constituents to represent them
And showed up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now
that doesn't seem fair. I
Yeah.
mean, we should have a basic, like, in your gut it feels kind of fair, but that would be a rule change,
Right.
by the Rules Committee.
It doesn't have to be a rule change by the Rules Committee. Actually, every single congressional district has the right under the rules to tell the party how it wants its alternates to be seated.
I did not know that.
Yes, there's a rule that within 10 days
Yeah.
of the elections at the state convention, the congressional districts can send in a letter to the state party that says we want our alternates seated before proxies. And I'm actually going to write something up like that, and publish it online so people can use it if they want.
So again, that's part of the education.
Right.
So when people are educated and they know the rules, they can then
Right.
say, wait a minute, that doesn't seem fair. Let's fix
Right.
this. So that's good. I like it.
And I just want to point out it's not just a gut feel. I mean, it is a gut feeling to me, about that. But just from the logic of democracy,
Yeah.
a person representing you is going to be much more effective than a piece of paper.
Absolutely.
There's another, a set of eyes, ears, brain to look at what's going on, process it appropriately, and serve their constituents. As opposed to somebody who couldn't make it, and nothing against people who can't make it sometimes.
Yeah. Hey, I've had it.
I've
had. So my concern is when I have it in my calendar for a certain week, and I've made plans the next week, and then all of a sudden it comes in. It's like wait a minute. I can't go now.
Yeah.
So we really need, and there was a time when we had like a 2-year calendar.
Right, and there's no reason that we couldn't do that.
Yeah. I think they have difficulty finding locations, but again, that you can, you need to plan ahead anyway.
Right.
But these are all things that can be fixed. Yeah.
Right. So those are so you'd be in favor of fixing the problem with to actually maintain proportional representation in some way. Even if, like with the at-large officers, I mean, you could elect those proportionally. You could elect
them in the same proportion so they wouldn't dilute the whole overall system.
Exactly. You could do that. You could do it that way.
Which would be a lot, though, to actually, because some groups only have one, so you'd have to have at least 267.
Well, no. You say that anyone on State Central can propose a slate because it's a multiple office position. Okay, and actually the rules say that because officer at large is multiple seats. The rules now say, actually, after the changes that we just made, that elections of multiple seats have to be by proportional voting. So I would argue that under the current rules, you actually couldn't do it the way that you used to be able to. But given what we talked about with Tim Hughes being the chair of the appeals committee, I have very little confidence that he wouldn't rule against the plain meaning of the plain language of the rules, because he's done that before. So I just don't have any confidence that he wouldn't do that again. I hope he wouldn't. And by the way, let me say, I've sat down with Tim Hughes. We've had a coffee. I think he's a nice guy. I don't have any problem with him personally. He just doesn't want to follow the rules, and I haven't a problem with that. But the SEC, I don't think you could elect them the way that you've done before, the way that the party's done before, under the new rules. And what you would do at this time is you'd say there are slates. People put together slates of people to be officers at large, and you vote, and through the same proportional voting process that you used, and you could do that reasonably. So that's a way to do it. I think that's a more complicated way to do it than we need to do it. I think that officers at large, we should think about, what do we want officers at large for? What's the purpose of this? Okay, and
so that's been my big question.
Sure.
What
I'll tell you the answer that they give us, but
yeah.
Have you heard an answer?
No, because I think it would be nice to have all of our officers to be surrogates, going to events, representing the party. Assisting with fundraising.
Sure.
Just to talk to their people and about the Democratic Party, and people give confidence in the party, and then hopefully people will donate, because we do need money.
Right.
I mean, as much as we can to say.
And by the way, I mentioned earlier that I dropped off about 900 membership forms. Again, we've heard from the party that about 30% of the ones that we dropped off actually also donated.
See.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we all the ones that we dropped off are free memberships. We don't actually print. Our system isn't even set up to print something that isn't a free membership. Though on the same form where you fill it out online, right next to the form, there's a link to the MDP site where you can donate, or you can join through their system that requires.
Anyway,
yeah. So they signed up through ours for free, because you can't sign up online through the MDP one for free.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. You also, by the way, you can't sign up on the MDP one if you're under 18. Because it goes through Act Blue, and Act Blue assumes it's a political contribution. You have to be, and they have to be able to verify.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So that's another big problem.
Okay. Because you can join the party from 16 to 18.
Right.
And vote and be a voting member.
Right. In fact, I just did a video of that with Gabe Gurule. I think I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, but who's a member of the party here in Washtenaw, and actually was just elected to the Washtenaw County Executive Board.
Cool.
So we wrote a script together, and we filmed it, and it's up there now.
We had I don't know if you know Ethan Petoltz, who's out of Canton. He was actually a Bernie delegate to the convention.
Oh, cool.
So he was Susan Nichols and I. He's a friend of ours. So kind of the three of us hung out a lot. And he's in college, and young kid. And I remember it's so funny. We're always like, oh, is Ethan okay? What is he eating? Where is he? What's he doing? And here we look, and he is being interviewed by some media outlet because he's wearing the delegate thing, and he is obviously very, very young. People wanted to talk to him.
Sure.
And he actually ran one of the campaigns for a state house race in Macomb County. So he's a pretty amazing kid. Yeah. Young man now.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, for example, Gabe is really gung-ho to organize a lot of the college campuses around here and get them involved in the party. One of the things that we're going to have to do when we get that many more people is figure out how to organize at a local level.
Yeah.
Because the way that the party's structured right now is, like we said, very top-down and doesn't allow for that kind of organic growth.
But if you look at the organizational structure, so here we are a club. We are not. We don't have a county party. Maybe it's because we don't have a county party in Wayne County, because we are not under the 11th Congressional District. And we have no county party. We are a unit of the Michigan Democratic Party.
Sure.
So on the org structure, it's like a line.
Sure.
We are part of that whole.
Right.
So I think that does leave room for us to be, more of a bottom, more of a.
Right.
And maybe they leave us alone a little too much. We can use a little support and resources and assistance.
I think that I think that I agree. I think that the state party should be like we talked about before, have services that it provides.
Yeah. There is such a need out there. People want They want to do something. They just don't know what. And they'll always say, I don't want to canvas. And I don't want to, okay, that's okay. There is value just doing something just for the good of the whole. There is value in that.
Yep.
And that creates our community.
Absolutely. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions for me or from the? I think it's pretty well known that I'm involved in a lot of the more progressive groups and travel in those circles maybe a little bit more than you do.
Yes.
I'm just wondering from your perspective, as from my perspective, you're much more tied into the established power structures.
Absolutely.
And I've asked you a lot of questions from the perspective of my group, group that I primarily organize with. Do you have any questions from your side of that?
I have one question. So, in talking to you and a lot of the issues that the progressives have with the party is in the way the rules are, the way the rules are implemented, and transparency. Is it just that, or so if we could address those, let's say incrementally, because we know change is hard. Do you think that we could bridge that gap? I mean, I want to bridge the gap.
Sure.
Would that be enough? At least a good faith effort. Two-part question. Second part is, would really sitting down and collaborating with people who maybe are not the progressives, are established, would that help too?
So first of all, I think that as far as the rules go, the issue is what everybody that I know in the progressive movement wants is a set of rules that are, as we've said repeatedly, fair, transparent, accountable, and democratic. That means things like when we say proportional voting is required in the rules, which is what it said actually all the way going back to 1974. I haven't tracked down rules that go any farther back than that, but that's what it said in 1974. It's what it said in 1991. It's what it said in 1995. It's what it said in 2016, and it's what it says today after the changes. That's the plain language of the rules, and that's not what's been followed. And the first, as I said before, rules are a starting place for building trust.
Okay.
And if we can't have a set of rules that you can read the plain language of and basically know what's going to happen, I mean, there might be some details and so on, but you can't have a situation where, on the one hand, the rules say proportional voting, and on the other hand, there's a system that's used that is in practical effect a plurality winner first past the post, which was what proportional voting was designed to get away from.
Yeah.
And then tell me that those two things are the same.
Yeah.
Okay? Because then...
And people have never been challenged on that.
Right, well, no, I challenged Tim Hughes on it, and he has told me repeatedly that he can't point to anywhere else outside of his own head where that's ever been true. Okay, but he insists that we just disagree.
Did you find instances where that was actually being done?
Yes, it happened in it happened in the 12th congressional district when I was running in 2017. It happened in the 5th congressional district. We have it on film, where what they did is instead of voting for a slate and a slate, they took apart each person and they ran them head to head, which meant that the largest plurality would win every vote because they were
without
voting proportional. And Tim Hughes literally said to me directly that he thinks that they should be allowed to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I'm getting passionate about that, but it's basically it's also, I mean, in that same 12th congressional district when I stood up and protested, and what happened there is that. I mean, I won't go into the whole thing. I maybe I'll do a video on it sometime, but because it really still, people were lying to my face, or they were so incompetent that they didn't understand things like things like cumulative voting. Okay, cumulative voting is a method of proportional voting that's used by the federal courts to enforce the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Okay, and in the 12th CD 2017, they told when we walked in the door, they told us that that's what they were going to use, and then what they described was plurality winner first past the post. And Nathan Triplett, who was the parliamentarian of the party, looked me in the eye and told me I had it wrong. Wow. And I'm sorry, but I know what cumulative voting is. I know how the federal courts enforce it. And he either didn't know what he was talking about or he was lying to me. And to this day, I don't know. And by the way,
it doesn't matter.
Well, right,
it was not done right.
It's right. And I just want to say again, I have nothing against the man, personally.
Yeah.
I thought that he did a decent job, in some cases even a great job, running the rules committee that you and I were on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought he did too.
There is at least one instance where I would not say that, but that's.
But we're all human, and we do the best we can.
I did. So let me finish answering your question. I'm sorry, it's a long answer.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, I just want everybody to understand, all that we've been saying about the rules is they should be fair, transparent, accountable, and democratic. And that means when it says proportional voting, we actually get proportional voting. When it says that SEC people are elected using proportional voting, then we maintain that proportionality. We don't throw it out the window in favor of a simple majority getting to overrule the proportionality. It means that when it says that each unit of the party has to explain how they're going to run an election in time for prospective members to participate fully, which is what the rules said before. It's still what the rules say after the change.
So that's 30 days ahead.
Exactly. Okay. So all of these things that I'm bringing up were violated in 2017 all over the place.
So think about how easy it would be to fix it.
I agree. It would be easy to fix it. The problem is that we had the Rules Committee and we had people there that were voting against fixing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably because they didn't understand it.
Well, so the thing is, here's the thing. I hear that a lot, and maybe that's the case. Okay, but the pushback that I got from people was, who are you to say that you understand these rules better than these folks? That's authoritarian thinking. And my answer is, I've been an election systems geek since I was this high. The first time I read the Democratic Party rules was sometime in the 1980s. I wasn't even involved with the Democratic Party, but I had read about what happened at the '68 convention and all of the changes that were pushed through after that, and I was interested in understanding how my government works, understanding that we had a two-party system, and this was one of the parties. And besides that, I'm a thinking human being who went and did my research. Why do you assume that I didn't?
Right.
Ask me the questions. I'll show you the details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll also say there were certain people that I did manage to get interested, to listen to what I was saying, and who would sit down with me and go through them. And every time I sat down with somebody, they said, let me say, there were two camps. Most people were, oh, okay, that makes sense, but I don't know how we change it.
Okay.
Okay. And there were other people who said all kinds of different excuses about, well, they might mean this word this way, or they might mean that word that way. The point of the matter is that the plain language indicates that there's going to be fairness, transparency, accountability, and democracy. And then the reality is that I get a ruling from the appeals committee that says, we ruled 20 years ago, we don't have to follow that rule.
Well, that's fixed, though. We got to remember that's fixed.
That piece of it is fixed.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that the person who argues that that's perfectly legitimate is the chair.
Well, we will, now that we have transparency, we hope, at least we'll know.
Right.
I can say, look, I do not know the detail. Mm-hmm. So the smartest people know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. Right? So we look at our president, who has no idea what he doesn't know. He's just completely clueless. Right. So I believe in subject matter experts, and I'm a reasonably smart person, and I can explain it. I can understand it. When you really understanding is when you can explain it to someone else.
Absolutely.
So I certainly.
You've been a teacher, so you.
I've been a teacher, right?
Right.
Actually, I used to tutor chemistry for free just because that was really the only way to learn it. It was, so complex, some of the stuff. They were helping me.
Sure.
But so as chair, I don't know that I will ever know all of to explain it. I don't need to. I just need people around that and to understand it, to say yes. That you're right, we are going to uphold the rules, we're going to treat people fairly, and I think the chair does have the power of the gavel enough to say, wait a minute, and to appoint people who will, and I don't know, I mean, I seems like all very nice, good people to me, but now the Rules Committee was opened again, right, at State Central.
Yeah.
So
was opened again?
No, weren't they charged with looking at something?
Well, there's some things that no, I'm not sure. I know that there were some things that the Rules Committee wanted to have investigated more. So, for example, distance participation, because there's so many. We didn't talk about that yet.
Yes, it's critical.
Yeah.
It's critical. Like, why couldn't we have on February 2nd?
Right.
Why can't we have a satellite convention around?
It seems to me that the UP, or somewhere central in the UP, or somewhere central in the upper part of the Mitten, and maybe on the west side and in the Thumb, and down in Detroit. If we had some regional stuff like that, and you could and people could vote there.
We could, you could Skype in the, I mean, people are doing their own caucuses, and then you Skype in the presentations, the speakers, and then you, I think we can, just to be fair. Just to be fair, and it's inclusive.
Right.
I think a lot of our people out there, they feel really left out, and that's got to end.
Right, and that's the kind of thing that, I mean, those kinds of things, whether it's like the thing with the proxies, or the at-large officers, or the distance participation, or the 30 days to become a member.
Yeah.
These are all barriers to participation and to feeling like participation is fair and equal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I cannot promise day one, but I can promise that we will continue to just get better. Do you think our last whole rules thing moved us?
Oh, so let me say, I got, I can go off on tangents, so I apologize about that. But
okay.
I do, as I said at the SCC meeting where we passed those rules, it's not everything that we were looking for, but it is a lot, and it's in the right direction. And all the stuff in it is in the right direction. So I was very happy that we were able to move that far.
Right.
I'm hoping that we're going to be able to move much farther, because if you want to have a big party, you have to have rules as a basis for trust. If you have a small party, you can get by with people having personal relationships that allow them to get things done that aren't going through the rules.
Right.
But when that happens, then you have a lot of things that get done that don't go through the rules, and then there's people that are left out. And what happens, I think, a lot of the time in organizations like that is you end up with a situation where people get used to doing things that way, and now you want to expand the party, and new people are coming in, and they're excluded from that, despite the fact that the rules say that they're not, that they shouldn't be.
Right. So that's important, and then we also see, maybe potentially certain races you could exclude, or people with disabilities by not allowing them to vote if they can't get to convention, or maybe women, if there are all men. But we don't. We're doing pretty good on that way as a party.
So I mean, that's right. I think there are some areas where we're doing great. I think there are some areas where we've gotten a lot better. I think when you the question that you asked me, there were two parts to it.
Yes.
And I wanted to there were. One part is that we need to actually use the rules as intended to ensure fairness, transparency, accountability, democracy. The other thing is we have to have a culture that holds the people in power to those rules, which means that they have to have a basic sense of what the rules are, and they have to have the sense that they can challenge the authority.
Right.
Because here's the thing: is that in every unit of the party, the chair and the vice chair and the other officers are there to make things go for the members. The members are the ones that are the party, and who the officers, including the chair, are supposed to serve. And they have the right, for example, to stand up and tell the chair, hey, for whatever reason in this meeting, you're not running things right. We want somebody else to run the meeting. They have the right to stand up and challenge a decision of the chair, and have a vote on it. And we need to work on building more of a sense among more people that it's not officers and the leadership telling us what to do and asking us to rubber stamp something.
Yes, you're exactly right.
It's we're in charge. It's our party, and they work for us. So when they tell us, no, you can't see the financials, but we want you to approve the budget, that's a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
And there's a cultural problem with people who say, there's a cultural problem with people who say, you're just attacking them because you don't like them. I'm not attacking anybody because I don't like them. She's asking me to approve a budget and I don't know what the financials are. How do,
Yeah. And interesting. Yeah.
So that's, does that answer your question?
Yes, but so that's what I mean, though, by the slippery slope, because our new definition of normal are the rules where they are. So we can, from there, get a little better.
Sure.
And so I see, change is hard. Right. This is hard stuff.
Yeah.
We are, as a nation, as a country, as a people, we're very top down and authoritative. That's why someone like Trump, that's why how could women vote for Trump? Because they want someone to tell them what to do, and he's a strong man, know? Now that's not who I am, not who,
right.
but...
Right, and not what most women are in most situations, or most men are in most situations. Because an authoritarian requires a bunch of people to bootlick him. Yeah. Otherwise, he doesn't have much authority.
He doesn't have authority, yeah.
But I'm sorry, I want to wrap up here, but there was one other piece of your question that I didn't answer, which was you asked if I thought it would help to bring for people to get together and meet. And absolutely. In fact, I've been in a couple of meetings like that, and I thought that they went pretty well.
Okay.
I think we need more of that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's really the rules, the culture, and getting to know people a little bit to sort of smooth the transition between people who know each other, are kind of in charge of stuff, and people who can't have a hard time accessing that. New people, etc.
We do a big gala. We used to do it every year, where maybe every other year it's just too much work. But what we've done on the board is we have asked even the spouses to not sit together, but to sit at every, not every, but most tables. And my husband, he would do it, and he would end up sitting with all 9 other people. But again, we don't want this. The Democratic Party is a lot like the middle school lunchroom.
Okay.
There's drama, there's gossip, there's kind of the popular kids, there's the geeky kids, there's the kids who just want to be, So what can we do to say, okay, we're grown-ups now, and let's all, when I came to the Northfield Democratic Club, I had a woman who I may have told the story, Liz Johnson, who saved me a seat. And you know what? That matters. So here I am all these years later. It was one person who had her friends. She could have been cliquey, but she wasn't. Now, I got to tell you the second funny story about Liz. I called her my political mom. So in 2012, I ran for, Susan and I and a couple other women, we wanted to go to the convention for Barack Obama. And so we ran at our congressional district. And so there was the unity slate, and then there was us. Now, Liz was UAW, so they said, okay, we need to count the votes. Everybody for the unity slate, go on that side of the hall, and everybody for the other slate, go on this side of the hall. Well, on our side of the hall, there were 15 or 20 people, and there were 100 people over there. So I look across, and there's Liz.
Sure.
So I yell, Mom!
Right.
And she says, got to vote with the union.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's who she was. I respect it.
Sure.
But, that's how it was.
As long as they're not using the unit rule, I don't have a problem.
Right. And they didn't. Well, yeah. But even with that, we were doing proportional because we had we only have 2 counties. Now, some of the counties, it has to be pretty complicated. Sure. Oakland County, you had your one color card. Wayne County, you had your other, and we had to do the math. That was when we used to do the math longhand, and that was hard. Now they have the computer program that helps it a little.
Right. Still had some math problems 2 years ago, but we solved them.
There was a time when I was very, very up, and I remember at our last training, my friend Carla said, Lisa DiRado was the only one with a calculator, and I practiced. I'm practicing how slate to calculate it, and I got that done back in the day.
Great. Well, let's to wrap up here. Do you have any last words? Anything you'd like to finish off with?
I just have a vision of a strong message. I mean, really, where we're trained, where we know how to speak about our democratic message, where we know who we are. I have a vision of resources to local clubs, training precinct delegates, and the third thing is I have a vision of bridging the divide within the party. And, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But if we can't even speak it, it will never happen.
Right.
So the first thing is speaking it. Then the second thing is the first 30 days figuring out where we are. Second 30 days, do some simple things, and then by 3 months decide, okay, what are we going to get done this year? And thank you. I learned so much from you. I really enjoy it.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to do it. I really appreciate you being here and taking all this time. We've been almost 3 hours, actually.
Oh my gosh! It's 6:30.
Not quite.
Oh
just,
Lord!
Coming up on almost.
Wow! I've got another event.
Okay.
No wonder I'm so hungry.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, that's like we took longer than we originally thought.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the conversation.
Well, this was very interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, I thought it was really great. And what you said just now about that we have to talk about it. That's really why I'm doing. I don't know if you've seen the different videos that I'm doing.
Yes, I saw one of them. I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, I think this. Were you in this chair?
Yes, I was in that chair exactly.
Pretty good.
In that other video, yeah. But I'm trying to have these conversations with people running for office, people that are electeds, activists, regular folks, so that we can have a community conversation about what's going on and figure out what we want to do. Because if we can't open up that and talk honestly with each other and respect each other's positions, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're just going to keep all the infighting.
Absolutely. I don't think it's that. I don't think we're that far from really having peace, some peace at least. There's always going to be issues, but
I really think the first step is everybody agrees that we're going to actually follow the rules.
The way they, as imperfect as they are, let's at least follow them right now.
At least follow them right now, and then try to
that's
make
a baseline.
Them as
that seems reasonable.
Right. I'm just saying I'm not willing to say just leave them the way that they are, because there are things in them that are specifically against that democracy part and the fairness part and the transparency part and the accountability part. And there are some of those things are really serious and will make it impossible to grow the party much larger, because they will continue to create a sense of distrust between new people coming in and established people in power that get to decide what the rules are in their favor. like,
But it's a process.
Sure.
We'll get it done.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much. I
you.
really appreciate it.